Alright guys, we are back, and what a trip we had. Just don't even know how to start telling you about it. It was an incredible time, 3,400 miles or so. I have to add it up. But before we start bringing you those videos, I wanted to do a short overview video. I've got our route on the screen here, what we planned originally, and then what we actually drove is what's actually on the screen right now. Now you can see that the routes are highly similar. We did drive primarily what we wanted to, but we did vary it up a little bit, like we went to Naples instead of over to Fort Myers. And the most significant change was our trip up the East Coast. When we got into Savannah, we had a tropical storm overhead, Tropical Storm Julia, and we had to really work with that and get around it. It was brutal out there on the interstate, riding in that type of weather with hail, and we had a good 40 to 50 mile an hour crosswinds, which actually weren't so bad until we hit the bridges where we opened up and were exposed to the weather. So at that part of our route, we chose to turn pretty much inland, and we headed up to Charlotte and went on up to Waynesboro, Virginia, where we picked up the head of the Blue Ridge Parkway and then came down. We had a wonderful time. But before we get into those videos, I wanted to take a little time to just show you the route that's on the screen, let you study that. And now I'm going to walk you around the rigs. I did a short video walk around of the rigs while we were up on the parkway. I'm going to use that for the video itself and talk you through some of the things that we did to the rigs there. And up first is my wife's rig, the 2010 Patrol. Now I've highlighted a few things here in the freeze frame that I want to talk about. The first one is the Core-Tec 2.0 magnetic tank bags. Those were fantastic items to have on the trip. I can't imagine how much more difficult it would have been to have made the trip without those. They magnetically stick to the tank. They're the smaller version, which for us was fine. And you can see I've added a strap to it to convert it into a backpack. So I don't like riding, especially long distances, with lots of things in my pockets. Just it's uncomfortable, they may fall out or whatever the case may be. So these Core-Tec bags were perfect for that. We could put everything in them. There's a little map window in the top if we wanted to use it. And when we take them off the bike, I guess if you want to call it a man purse, you can. But I took it and threw it over my shoulder like a backpack, and it worked wonderfully. The next thing on there, of course, I've highlighted is the Airhawk seat. Those did well, and I really liked mine, which you'll see in a moment. I can tell that it helped me ride longer. It's not a magic bullet. It doesn't cure discomfort while riding for long distances 100%, but it definitely helps you ride further and keep some of the pressure points off of you. My wife didn't like hers as much until we took it off, and she realized how hard the original seat was without it, and then it went back on. And then the last thing in this section I want to highlight is we have some saddlebags that we put on there. And this is just inexpensive pouch saddlebags that drape over the seats. They did good, but they tended to fill up with water, and they just weren't as good as we wanted them to be. But the other thing is they really don't accent the bike. And while we were in Maggie Valley, North Carolina, my wife actually came across a set of saddlebags that you'll see in the video when we get there, and we replaced these and pulled them off the bike. Moving a little bit further up, on my wife's rig, the Patrol here, you can see that we've added an air horn down there. Added those to both rigs. Love them. They did great, and they get people's attention rather quickly. They're considerably louder, and they're the Denali Sound Bomb air horns. Fairly easy install on the Urals, and it just did wonderful. Of course, we have a windshield that we put on hers. I forget, I think it's a Slipstream windshield. It's been on there for a while. It is not the greatest windshield to have on there, but it does the job. The mounting on these is a little weak, and it just kind of bends and rattles around, but we've got it locked down now, and it seems to be staying. And lastly, on the throttle, you can see a little paddle sticking up, and that's called a cramp buster. And that was one of the most useful things we added for a long trip to these rigs. We've been about on a 1,000-mile trip without them, and I can tell you I won't ever go on a long trip without these cramp busters on the rigs. Moving right along up to my rig, the Tourist, you can see we've added a biker's friend to the back of it. That's actually the extra large. That was invaluable on this trip. My helmet fits inside of it, and it gave me a good firm backrest, which I could not have done this trip without. A little bit further down you see the Rotopax fuel can. It holds 3 gallons of fuel, and that came in extremely useful to us twice on this trip. And lastly, you can see that I have added a trailer hitch to the Tourist, but I have not obtained a small trailer or anything yet to tow with it. I am considering that for the future. Just have to see how it goes. I'm still a little apprehensive about pulling 300 or 400 pounds behind the rig. I'm going to have to experience before I can just say that it's an okay thing to do, but that'll be coming up in some future videos. So let's come back to this biker's friend for just a second. It's basically a large, I think it's 8 or 9 inch PVC tube, maybe a little larger than that. My helmet does fit in it as long as I take the camera off of it. And it's an eloquently well made accessory to go on to the motorcycle. And if you don't want something that's going to permanently mount, or maybe there's nothing that will permanently mount, maybe there are no rails or adjustments you can use, this, in my opinion, is a pretty good option. I found it to be easy to install, easy to use, a little firmer than I expected it to be. I'll definitely do a separate video on it and show it to you a little bit closer. But as for the trip, the backrest was a tremendous aid to me. I have lower back issues anyway, and being able to lean back and have lumbar support and take the pressure off my back was something that I simply could not have made this trip if I had not had that on there. And moving right along, you come up here and you can see my Airhawk on the Harley solo seat that I have. It was a big improvement over just setting on the Harley solo seat. And to kind of qualify that, I would say it was a big improvement after the first 100 miles. Before the first 100 miles, yeah, it feels better, but after you've sat on there for a while, it becomes a significant improvement over just sitting on the plain Harley solo seat. And you can see my RAM mount cell phone holder. Got a HTC, I think it's a M91, something like that. And it clamps in there very well. That's been on there for quite a while, and it's been through, I guess, 10,000 miles or so with a cell phone clamped to it. Never offered to let go, and it's done really, really well. Now you'll see the cord coming out from under it. I actually had to buy that at a truck stop. The original cord that I had on there was just a cheap USB cord. I ran it over from the Sidecar, plugged it in there, and it actually stopped working during this trip. So I bought a heavy duty one that was at a truck stop, and it seems to be doing pretty good. And then you can see my Denali Sound Bomb air horn installed on the Tourist as well. And moving around to the front, you can see that I installed some LED headlights on the rigs. Those did very well. I'm not quite as impressed with the low beam at night as I am the high beam, but the bright white light during the day is highly visible. And then I have my RAM mount suction cup video camera mount, which never fell off. It sat pretty much right where you see it the entire trip. Had no trouble with it. Wind, rain, hail, it didn't matter. It just sat right there and held the camera. The GoPro, however, let's just say it didn't quite survive this trip, so I switched over to the Contour Roam 3. And there will be more information about that coming as well. And coming on around the rig, you can see that I picked up a passenger since the trip started. A little mini Binney there is what we called them. And you can see the cramp buster on my throttle as well. That's about the position that I ride with it in, maybe a little bit higher. And then you can see this side of the biker's friend. It's got pouches on both sides and both ends open. Again, very valuable addition to the rig. And moving along, the last few things we did to the rig, while I was at Hollopaw Ural, I did add a over the spare tire rack, which came in useful for hauling a few items. And you can see that we don't have the standard tonneau cover over the sidecar. We had some custom ones made. We certainly paid enough for them to be good. They are not. The quality is not what we expected nor requested. So before I go into detail on those, I'm going to give the person who made them an opportunity to make them right before I name them. In the meantime, I hope you enjoy this video and the future videos that are to come. We'll be putting them together over time and releasing them. And finishing up with the rigs here, you can see my wife's Patrol again. One very important feature that the rack helped out tremendously with was having a cooler. We had several comments when we stopped. Wow, you can take a cooler with you, and we certainly took advantage of putting water in that. Well, make sure you subscribe to our channel and join us for the first part of our journey. That'll be the next video coming up, where we will leave home near Jackson, Georgia, and head down to Fargo, Georgia, and spend the night before heading on. So again, be sure to subscribe, like, leave a comment, let us know what you think. It encourages us to make more videos if you like these. And you know, you guys out there, stay safe while you're on the road. Wave if you see us.